Hello, I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer for RealTime Fantasy Sports. Welcome to another edition of the RealTime Fantasy Sports show. On today's show, I'm joined by Logan Glaser, once again contributing writer here at RealTime Fantasy Sports. Logan, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, Jeff, thanks for having me on.
On today's show, we're going to do the receiver preview for the upcoming fantasy season. We've already done quarterbacks, running backs, now we're up to receivers, a very deep position. We're going to go in depth on that. Before I get to that, though, I did want to mention, don't forget about our great commissioner product here at RealTime Fantasy Sports. If you're new to the site and you want to check out the commissioner product, totally free the first year. Just put in the promo code RTFSNews and you can sign up for the commissioner product totally free. We'll help you move your leagues over here as well. If you need help doing that, just email support@rtsports.com. So if you want to get in our commissioner product, I highly recommend you checking it out, especially if you're new to the site. You can see what we have to offer, all sorts of great features. We go more in depth than your normal site out there, all different things you can do, and we're a great product. Our commissioner product definitely is something we're really proud of, right, Logan?
For sure. There's so many different features that you can choose from, so many different rules, scoring options, different settings. You can have multiple drafts within the same league, just tons of different options that the commission can set up.
And we also want to talk about something we're doing this year, totally new. We've never done this. We still have our money leagues, all those great money leagues going off nonstop, but talk to the listeners out there, the viewers, I should say, about something that we're going to offer this year at RealTime Fantasy
In the next
Sports.
couple of months, we're going to be launching prop betting on our site. So you're going to be able to take the over/under on different players' props. For baseball, it's like total bases, runs scored. For football, you're going to be looking at rushing yards, passing yards for certain players, and it's single players. So you're going to be betting against us with the line that's set there. So you can go over/unders. You can times your money all the way up to times 10. So for certain bets. So
awesome, and that's going to be launching very soon, so be on the lookout for that. We're very excited about that. And I'd be remiss not to mention our new desk here. How about this?
Yes, it's certainly special. You got the monitor in front and good to go.
Yeah, I think it looks great. I'm really excited to be doing these on a weekly basis going forward, especially during the season. We're going to be doing a lot of videos. We're going to have guests as well, so really excited about this. These videos that we're doing now on this desk just brings it all together in my view. So let's get to this receiver preview now, Logan. First of all, I want to ask you, who are you taking first overall? Is it Cooper Kupp? No question about it. Is that what you're doing?
I am going Cooper Kupp as my first wide receiver overall. He had the greatest wide receiver season in the history of fantasy football last year by 51 points. That is a huge margin, which he broke Antonio Brown's record from a couple years ago. He had 145 receptions, 16 touchdowns, and he's most likely the reason why you either won or lost your league last year with how many points he put up. The Rams' offense is kind of similar to last year. They got a couple different pieces coming in, a couple coming out. They got Robert Woods leaving them, but then they also got Odell, who's still up in the air. You got Allen Robinson coming in, but I still expect Cooper Kupp to get a lot of targets this year.
So I am actually going Justin Jefferson. He's my number one receiver for this year. I just love his potential. I think Cooper Kupp's going to have a bit of a regression. Jefferson had double-digit fantasy points all but one game last year. He was targeted 167 times. He had double-digit targets 10 of 17 games. Just 9 drops for his entire career on 292 targets. So he catches nearly everything thrown his way. And I think his fantasy numbers would have been a little better if his touchdown numbers were a little more improved. Adam Thielen gets a lot of those looks in the red zone, but I think Jefferson will get more touchdowns this year. He had a career high 10 last year. I could see him bumping that up to 14, 15, even 16. And I think new coach Kevin O'Connell's a big plus for Justin Jefferson and the entire Vikings offense. He comes from the Rams, and he's already said Jefferson's going to be the Cooper Kupp of this offense. So I'm excited for Jefferson this year. I think he's going to have a huge, huge season, and I'm taking him first at receiver. All right, let's talk about some more early round players. This time, guys we're avoiding. So how about a guy in the first few rounds of the draft that you just want no part of?
Yeah, so I'm going to be avoiding Tyreek Hill. So Tyreek Hill is currently being drafted as the number 7 overall wide receiver. The reason why I'm avoiding Hill is just because the offensive change with going from Kansas City over to Miami. Last year, Kansas City averaged 29.4 points per game, whereas Miami was in the bottom tier at 20.1 points per game. That's a huge difference from the offense of change, and you're going from Patrick Mahomes to Tua, which is also a big difference, and you also get Jalen Waddle with that Miami offense as well to compete with targets.
So I'm with you. I'm going with a player that changes teams, and my guy is Devonta Adams. I'm worried about him. Still think he's super talented. Still think he's going to have a good season, but I don't think he's going to produce near the numbers he did with the Packers. He has more to compete with in targets than he did in Green Bay. He has Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, which is a favorite target of Derek Carr. He dominated targets for the Packers as well. 149 plus targets, 3 or 4 seasons. I don't think he's going to be able to match those numbers in Las Vegas, and I think it's going to take a little time for him to form a rapport with Derek Carr as well. So I think you have to think about that. Carr already has a great rapport with Waller and Hunter Renfrow, so I'm worried about Adams having a bit of a regression, and I'm not going to use one of those really early draft picks to get him this year. All right, Logan, a lot of drafts are won in the middle rounds, and the receiver group is really deep this year. How about some mid-round targets that you think could push teams over the edge?
Yeah, there's a lot of different wide receivers in that middle range. The one that I'm specifically going to be looking at is Terry McLaurin, who has an ADP of 50. I would say talent-wise, McLaurin is actually a top 10 wide receiver overall in the NFL. The thing that you really have to underline with McLaurin is his QB situation. So in the last 3 years that McLaurin has been on Washington, they've had Case Keenum, Dwayne Haskins, Colt McCoy, Alex Smith, Kyle Allen, Taylor Heineke, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Garrett Gilbert. They've had 8 different quarterbacks with McLaurin in the last 3 years, and hopefully they get some stability with Carson Wentz coming in. And I'm going to be looking at McLaurin in the 4th or 5th rounds in drafts. Another wide receiver I'm going to be looking at in the middle of the pack is Christian Kirk, who has an ADP of 109. So the Jaguars just spent $72 million on a 4-year contract with him. They're going to get him the ball. They didn't sign him for all that money just not to get him the ball. The Jaguars kind of need a big year. They've had the number 1 overall first pick 2 straight years. Lawrence had a little bit of a down year last year. They need him to bounce back this year. And Kirk is in a very similar spot that I think Brandon Cooks have been in with the Texans. They're both on kind of bad teams, but they're the clear number 1 option. With the QB play hasn't been great for either one of the situations, but they're going to get so many targets that they're going to have some value.
I like both those calls. I really like Kirk. I've been getting him a lot in my early drafts. I think his ADP is going to go up as the season gets closer. So 2 mid-round targets for me. My first one's Allen Lazard. I just talked about Devonta Adams, how he had a ton of targets in Green Bay. Somebody has to get those. I think Lazard's going to end up being that guy in Green Bay to lead them in targets. He's already a good red zone target, so I think the increased catches is really going to help his value. And I think he's worth the gamble at his current ADP. You can get him in the middle rounds as well. So Lazard's definitely been a target of mine in the mid rounds of drafts. Another one, Brandon Ayuk. Started last year in the doghouse, really took him some time to get going, but he had a big second half to the season. He had double-digit fantasy points 3 straight games to end the season, and 6 of his last 8. He had a career-high 826 yards. I think he'll be a factor from day 1 this year. He's going to top 1,000 yards, near double-digit touchdowns. I think Ayuk's a great guy to get in the mid-rounds of your drafts. All right, let's talk about guys late in the draft. So some late-round gambles. You gave me 2 mid-round targets. How about 2 late-round gambles,
Yeah,
Logan?
a couple of sleepers I'm going to be looking at this year is Devonta Parker. So Devonta Parker gets a change in scenario with going to New England. 3 years ago, Parker had 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns. That's amazing numbers that he put up in Miami, and he's going to be slotting in as the number 1 wide receiver with the Patriots since they haven't really done much in the wide receiver core. They kind of looked at getting some big names in Tyreek, Debo, A.J. Brown, but they were not able to pay the price for those, so they settled with Parker, and I expect him to get some targets early with the Patriots. And another player I'm looking at is Rondell Moore, which Christian Kirk is gone that we talked about, and Hopkins is out for 6 weeks. So he really slides into an important wide receiver 2 role with Arizona. They brought in Marquise Brown, but Moore's going to get a lot of targets with that wide receiver 2 area with Arizona, especially the first 6 weeks. You can go ahead and start him, and he's going in the last rounds of drafts this year.
Yeah, they find all sorts of ways to get more of the ball. He was actually a guy I was considering putting on my late round gamble list here. I'll give you 2. My first one's Tim Patrick. You can get him for next to nothing. His ADP is 162. He had 2 straight seasons with 50-plus catches, 700-plus yards, and that was with terrible quarterback play. Now he has Russell Wilson throwing him passes. I'm not sold on Jerry Jeudy. I think Patrick's going to have a really big year, his best to date. And again, ADP 162, I think he's worth the gamble. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if he outproduces Jerry Jeudy. So I think he's a great, great late round target for fantasy teams right now. Another one for me is DJ Shark. Again, ADP 160, just before Tim Patrick. He's a former 1,000-yard receiver. He missed most of last year with a fractured ankle, so this isn't a torn ACL or Achilles, so this is an injury that's easier to come back from. I think he'll be completely fine, 100% healthy for the start of this year. A lot of talent, really talented player, moves to a new offense with a better quarterback situation. I know Jared Goff has some questions, but it's still better than what Shark had to deal with in Jacksonville, so I think that's an upgrade for him. I think he's going to have some big games in this offense. I especially like Shark in best ball format, so I've been taking him a lot in those drafts.
Yes,
I think he's a good late round target. All right, this rookie receiver class was really heralded this year. A lot of great rookies that were drafted, really deep. Who's a guy that you're targeting in drafts?
Yeah, there's so many different wide receivers that are going off with, especially with the rookies. Treylon Burks is the one that I'm going to be looking to target in all my leagues. He is very similar to A.J. Brown with his size and structure. Burks can make an immediate impact with the Titans as well, just based off that they don't have a good wide receiver core. They brought in Robert Woods, who's coming off an injury, but Treylon Burks is going to make an immediate impact his rookie season, so I'm going to be looking at him in some of my drafts.
I like Burks a lot too. My rookie receiver I'm targeting is Drake London. Next to nothing to compete with for targets at receiver in Atlanta. Probably the best receiver room for any rookie, in my opinion, when it comes to getting targets. I think he's going to get a ton of work. He's got to replace Calvin Ridley, who should be suspended for the entire season. Doesn't look like the NFL is going to overturn that. So that means London's going to get a lot of work. I know Kyle Pitts is there, but I think London's going to lead the receivers in Atlanta in targets. Plus, he has great size, hands as well. He can play outside or out of the slot, so you can move him around. He has a lot of versatility. So I think London is set up for a really big rookie season, mainly because he has next to nothing to compete with for targets in Atlanta outside of Kyle Pitts. So really excited about him this year. All right, Logan, that's our receiver preview for 2022. Again, really deep class. I didn't ask you at the top, but how are you approaching the position in general? Are you going to try to get some of these guys early? You're going to wait? What's your strategy?
With how deep the pool is for wide receivers, I think I'm going to be waiting this year. I'm going to target those early running backs and then try to slide in with those wide receivers in rounds 3 through 6.
I like that too. I still may look at getting an elite receiver in the second round or so, but I'm going to load up mainly in, I think, like round 6 through 8, 6 through 9. I may go back to back receiver at some point. Just because I think a lot of those guys have a lot of potential. So I'm probably not going to go too early, not stack my team receiver for sure. Like you said, look at that running back spot early in drafts. All right, Logan, thanks again for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Jeff.
All right, this has been Jeff Paur for RealTime Fantasy Sports. Have a great day, everyone.